That's a tough question because we talk about human skills here, and this is, I think, going to become increasingly more important. This is life skills. I think to be successful and to have people believe in you, you at least have to be your full, genuine self when you're at work. For everyone, again, it's going to be a little different for how they get there. But ultimately, like, we're going to lead by example. Like our programs are designed in a way that makes sure that is at the forefront of the outcomes that we're looking for.
I think it's terribly important to insist on individual values.
Learning Culture Podcast.
Initiative, creation, all these things which we value. It's now possible to make organizations on a larger scale than was ever possible before.
Learning Culture Podcast.
Teach people to analyze the kind of things that are said to them.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Learning Culture Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Barry, and this is a show about building cultures of learning inside companies. My guest today is Stephen Ivany, the Senior Manager of Global Leadership Development at Marriott. Stephen and I connected about 6 months ago after I saw some posts of his on LinkedIn about the leadership programs that they were running at Marriott. And I knew instantly that we thought about developing leaders and learning in the same way. So I had to hop on a call with him. And it was during those conversations that I realized another interesting fact about Stephen. And that is that he is, and he won't probably like me saying this, but one of the world's best trombone players. So he has this whole other career where he has played at Carnegie Hall twice. He's played at the Lincoln Center in New York, lots of great venues around the world. He has mastered the trombone to such an extent that he's been able to break the rules and commission 25 brand new pieces of work with the instrument. So in today's conversation, what you're about to listen to is what lessons Stephen has drawn from that career as a musician and then as a teacher of music that he's now applying in leadership development for Marriott. So you're going to learn about how important it is to break things down into bite-sized pieces, the importance of play, and Stephen draws on his experience as a father of a 2-year-old, where wild exploration is really that genesis of learning, the importance of curiosity, the role a mentor plays in helping us develop self-efficacy, the role of just practicing and getting reps, and related to that, the role that structure and freedom play sort of as counterparts that have a healthy tension. And finally, the role of joy in learning, going back to that playfulness and how important it is to really love what you're doing and how we can see that throughout our lives. So I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. We talk about skills as well, especially in the age of AI. And I am excited to continue that conversation throughout the next few episodes of the podcast. But you're going to love this one. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Stephen Ivany. Stephen, welcome to the show. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Yeah, me too. Okay, so I want to spend the first part of this conversation talking about your background in music. For those who don't know, and those who don't, you get a little bit of the context from the intro to this, but you were I want to say, master trombone player. And specifically, I want to touch on one point for folks who maybe don't understand what this means, but you have commissioned 25 new works on the trombone. So what does that actually mean? Yeah. So, and this is, I completely switched careers midlife, or third life, however you want to look at it. I don't want to say a midlife. That's a little morbid, but, and I haven't really shared an awful lot about an entire previous career that I had. I was a professional trombonist and professor for 16 years. And a master trombonist is really quite kind, but truly was in the upper echelon of classical trombonists around the world. I found great success, traveled the world, met wonderful people, played at some really amazing venues, like you said, one of the key things that I really got into throughout especially the later phases of my time in music was commissioning new works. And I commissioned over 25 new pieces for trombone or trombone in chamber music settings, and became a huge passion of mine. One of the things I realized pretty early on is trombone was a new solo instrument. We're actually one of the oldest orchestral instruments. We were made unchanged since the 1500s. But as far as solo repertoire is concerned, we really didn't have a lot, and I could share why. And there's some really funny, sad stories about that. But one of the things I wanted to do was add to that, uh, and in doing that, I found that I had a real passion and kind of knack for doing the unknown, finding those problems, those languages that hadn't been written yet, that hadn't been heard yet, and figuring out how to translate them for people. I did this as a performer, and then that really bled into my teaching. Was how do I help folks take something that is wildly unmanageable? It's you couldn't wrap your arms around it if you tried. And how do you use a methodology, through great discipline and fundamentals, to break down the complex art? Art is not black and white. So how do you break it down into bite-sized pieces that they can tackle day by day to make sure that they're getting there? And it was a real joy for me to do, and was one of the impetuses to leave music. Funny enough, I was doing this thing that I loved and was really energized by, and frankly realized that I could do that more and faster in a different space. And that seemed at that point in time and still really interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah, and you made a big career pivot. So we'll get to that. So you've played at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center. I just want to underscore the point here. Like, this is like an extremely impressive resume. I think when I found out about it, because you and I talked through the context of leadership development, and then I found out you're this like really well thought after trombonist, right? And so, and I think what appeals to me most about the story is that it's an arc of learning the rules and mastering those so that you could break them and
Yeah.
create something new, right? And so let's start there. Like, let's start, and I want to kind of understand what your process was for learning the trombone. Like, so what drew you to, what was the motivation to initially start there?
So I started the trombone as a piano student, and like any really focused 8-year-old boy, sitting through a 30-minute piano lesson weekly was torture. When I was a kid and became a teenager, all I wanted in life was to be Steve Nash. For those listening, NBA Canadian basketball legend. I even tried to grow my hair out like Steve Nash had hair. Didn't work out for me. Neither did my career in basketball. But I would go to piano lessons in a Vince Carter jersey and silk shorts and basketball shoes. And so my level of focus wasn't necessarily optimal. However, my piano teacher at the time, brilliant, kind man, Brian Way, he was a trombone player as well. And so in his piano studio, he had this shiny trombone. And so at 8 years old, 9 years old, that was my reward for getting through the piano lesson. If I could give him 25 minutes of quasi attention, he'd let me play his trombone at the end. And so that was how I was introduced to the instrument. And then I started, really like every student at that point in Canada, started through the band program, public education music program. I started just like everyone else and absolutely fell in love from day one, and started there. So that's how I ended up on trombone.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so you're playing around with it. It was like a treat. It was like something you were like, oh, you looked forward to. There was an element of play as well, right? In that
Absolutely.
as well. And so when did you first start taking it seriously? Like, or did you ever even think of it like that?
No, there was absolutely kind of a moment for me where it switched from being play, and it was that word of play is so great. And being in learning right now, and being a new parent as well, watching, I have a 2-year-old who I watch play every day, where learning is such a joy for him. It is all about play. That's what it was from fourth grade when I started, really through to the beginning of 11th grade. It was just that. It was wild exploration. Everything was possible. Whether I was learning different instruments, tuba, trumpet, trying to play oboe. I did a lot of singing, piano playing, musicals, you name it, I did it. It was just play. I loved it. It was fun. I had great friends through it, and I was good at it. I do come from a family of musicians, so like I have some, I guess, some genetic advantages, and then some nurture advantages to having family who understood what it took to be a musician. So because I was good at it, I was getting reinforced by that. Teachers were telling me I was good. That feels good. So you keep going. But 11th grade was truly when I made the decision to become a professional trombonist. That was what I was going to be when I grew up. And every kind of decision I made from that point on at 16 years old served becoming the best version of the trombone player that I could be. And so every decision, what I did in the summers, the types of part-time jobs I took, how I spent my money, where I traveled, what concerts I was seeing, who I was taking lessons with, all pointed towards one singular goal.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And so during that time frame, what were maybe the top one or two things that were key to you getting to the level that you set as a vision for yourself?
Um, there were like kind of three things, and you'll hear me say these words a lot. And so one was just a natural tendency to be curious. And so anytime I had the opportunity to learn more, I took it. And I still am that way. And so when I talked about this 11th grade moment, like why then did I decide to become a professional trombonist? My high school at the time had this wonderful, now it seems silly, but it was a provincial grant for broadband internet access where we could speak with other people around the world on the internet. This crazy new technology that allowed me to have lessons with a legendary Canadian trombonist. He actually just passed away, I think, last month. Pace was at one point the principal trumpet with the National Symphony Orchestra in Ottawa and National Arts Center Orchestra in Ottawa. And I started taking lessons with him. And it was the first time being from an island where I'm working with this person from the capital of my country who was saying like, you could do this if you took it seriously. Moving from like, play is still wildly important, and in commissioning works, you're always playing. But it was shifting from like, this is just a thing I do to like, this is the thing I do. And so working with him was the real reason for that. And then truly in 11th grade, like I started having success gigging and making music with other adults. And I started making money doing it. And that really started to feed into like, oh, I can do this. And so those two things kind of happened at the same time. And it was that moment where I was really going to put my foot down and this is what I was going to do. From picking what grad school I wanted to go to after undergrad. I told my dad at 16 that I was going to go to Yale School of Music for my master's. And that's what I did. And so like everything was devoted to doing those things.
Yeah. Curiosity. Well, we're going to come back to that. That's near and dear to my heart. I found also striking how important a mentor is in this, and that.
Yeah, and you'll hear me say right. Be connected a lot as well. Another C, having like great connections and for me, people who were looking out for me to give me opportunities to be in front of these people. And so it was my, at that point, high school band director, Grant Etchegary, who saw a young kid who probably just needed just a little bit of tough love from like a real teacher, and put me in front of Pace. And then I had other like just really amazing teachers as well. I won't name them all, but like Karen Bulmer is one that sticks out for me. People who, I had just had great connections in that way. And then, for me, it didn't feel like it was courageous, but to be courageous and to go out and put yourself out there.
Yeah.
I didn't know better. And I think there's a real argument for just not knowing better.
Yes. Yeah.
But sometimes you just need to be brave and take that leap. Like I'm from an island, and all my family are on that island.
and it's a wonderful place in the world. And choosing to be a professional musician for me meant the guarantee of leaving. Like that was a guarantee. When I made that decision, you're sealing the fact that you might stay for undergrad, and it did. I had a wonderful experience going to college in Newfoundland. But I was pretty much, if I'm going to be successful, I have to leave this place. And that came, that's something I've grappled with later in life, certainly as I've started my own family. But yeah, that it's kind of all just there and part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that the mentor is giving you that self-efficacy or that self-belief to then be brave and take those risks. And also, like you said, you didn't know better, but and I feel like that's a good point, because bravery is also becomes more important for people who started to believe the stories in their heads. Like the more you believe those stories, the more bravery you need to challenge them.
Yeah, I mean, I just got back from a wonderful week of vacation. I'm wearing something with a palm tree on it to remind me that it was sunny where I was a few days ago, and it's cold and icy here in Connecticut. But I'm terrified of the ocean, and I watched this week 4-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 16-year-olds snorkeling fearlessly as I'm like 4 feet from shore, terrified to look out over my shoulder in case, a shark comes in from the abyss. Because I've watched too many shark documentaries. And so it lives in my head as this big, scary thing. And so if I had told myself as a teenager, like, this is scary, you're going to go out into this big, giant, scary world. And it is brutal and sometimes demoralizing and very personal. You don't do it. And so I just kept going. I was having fun. I was having success. I was making great friends. I was doing things I enjoyed. And so I just kept putting one foot in front of the next. I just kept seeing what the next opportunity would bring.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that this is a good transition point into talking about leadership development, because you've kind of laid out the framework for what is how people learn. It's practice. There's a self-efficacy thing in there. It's the curiosity to start. The learning by doing. I mean, it's all of that. It's mapped out in your journey. And yeah, I mean, we'll come back to your journey, because I think that's it, the musical part of it, because I think it's an interesting thing. But let's talk on the curiosity part, because this is, it's the name of my company. It's something that I think is going to be more and more become the most important skill for leaders. I'm curious that you're responsible for some of Marriott's biggest leadership programs. I'm curious how you've seen, and I know like one of the tenets of that is be curious, right? I wonder if you have a story of something of a leader or someone you've seen go through these programs where the curiosity really transformed their approach. Like, how does that become real to you?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things, and why I went from performing and then got it really into teaching as a professor, like I love that aha moment. Right. Like, and if you put curious in the name of your company's title, like you love that moment when someone gets there on their own, in their own way, through their own tools. It is just so satisfying to help shepherd that. And I work with an incredible team of people at Marriott to build these programs and to help people get to that moment, whatever it may be for them, because we have leaders coming from around the world. We're a truly global company. I think we're like over 900,000 employees at this point. Every corner, nook, and cranny of the world, you'll find a Marriott. And so this role was a dream for me, because I got to continue doing that with just some really truly incredible people. And so in one of the programs that I run, they're there because they're great. They're there because they were so good at their jobs. They impressed their leaders. They were good to their teams, and they got results. They delivered excellent hospitality for the customer, and people kept wanting to come back to their properties. That's why they were there. And what's really fun for me in one of the programs that we do is moving them from being an excellent doer. So this idea of, I am a leader, I am an expert in all of these things that is required for success in this leadership role. I'm a business-centered, focused person, to moving them to, it's a chaotic future. We have no idea what the challenges and the sticky problems are going to be from day to day. And if we try to solve one and apply it then to the next, you're going to get stuck again. Generations of associates, our employees, are changing rapidly. I mean, the difference between a millennial associate and a Gen Z associate is vast. Not to mention your Gen X or your baby boomer generations that all work within your teams. And so you have these huge groups of people that have different needs, different priorities, and you've got to bring them all together to figure out how you're going to make this work. And so the fun part for me is really moving from this business-centered, doing expert in everything, to a human-centered leadership mind frame of like, I'm accelerating the people around me. I'm amplifying the voices of my team. I'm enabling them to do the work and to be the experts in their areas. I'm enabling them to come to me with not only successes and victories, but failures and challenges, where we can work together openly and effectively to tackle them together. Where I have a hand on all things and I have the ability to become quickly, and we do talk a lot about AI. I'm a big proponent of using AI as a leader. You can become an expert in something really quickly now. And so, but that doesn't mean you have to hold that knowledge forever to be a part of a problem solving session. And so we want those leaders to become these accelerators of the team. And in that way, you're empowering people rather than just having them be executors for you. You can do more. You can solve bigger problems. And by doing that, the customer's going to be happier, right? We're going to have a better experience for people. And whether that's on property or through headquarters, we all have different customers. The more we're able to innovate and solve problems that seemed impossible before, like a new commission, if you can break it down into easy bite-sized pieces, apply good frameworks and hard skills, but really lean on your people to get to a really great solution, we're always going to come out and feel really good about that.
Yeah, and so this makes me think, going like kind of these parallel things of your music career and what you're doing now. There's in music, there's this fascinating intersection of the sort of technical mastery of the instrument, and then the emotional interpretation, right, of the piece and of what you're trying to convey. And it feels like that's a really important point now in the context of like what you've just been talking about, and how to use AI and how to accelerate things through people, and that ability of a leader to inspire, motivate, hold people accountable, like that human to human piece is just like so obviously more important now than anything. Like knowledge is no longer power, right? Knowledge is knowledge is free for everyone, basically.
It's free for everybody.
Yeah. And so like, how do you work that into your programs where we're talking about a very fluid thing? We're talking about being flexible and adaptable and being able to, and you sort of touched on that earlier, but I'm curious, like, how do you actually think about designing that into your programs?
So I'll start with music. You started the question with like the polarity between technical perfection and artistic expression and freedom. And those two things do seem to be like in contrast of each other. Like if you focus and it does, if you over index on one, you miss out on the other. And the truth is, an audience comes to hear, they pay to hear artistic expression. But if you do not have technical perfection, they're also going to be pulled from the moment. So you have to hold those two polarities like really much in parallel, and that's really difficult. But that's where having a strong process, having great tools, really come into play. And so as a musician, like it's having and if I've got any former students listening to this, they're going to roll their eyes, but having a great routine to go through your fundamentals. If you're not focused on that every day, then you're never going to be able to get to expressing yourself freely. And once you've mastered those fundamentals, you can express the language more freely. But then how do we know what to express? Like, where do we get that inspiration from? And that comes from like being a part of the community, listening to all sorts of different music and different interpretations, and accepting different interpretations and different ideas when it comes to what is a musical expression, what is a masterwork, what is a great performance. I don't think it would be controversial to say that like Yo-Yo Ma's Bach cello suites are truly like perfection. But there are other great recordings too that he has where he plays totally different, where he plays with Bela Fleck and plays bluegrass music. I think understanding like there are different sides to what we can express in the way we want to be heard is really important. So taking that lived experience is something that I lived and breathed every day for such a long time. When we work with our leaders, this is what we're getting at, is that we have these hard skills, these processes, these routines that are important. Our daily standing meeting to start each day to make sure that we're checking in with every area and every associate to make sure things are going smoothly. These are the routines, the fundamentals that are going to make business work. But then how do we connect with those people so the artistic side is, how are we empowering, how are we motivating, how are we accelerating those people to do more, to work smarter, to strive to be curious in their own rights, to be problem solvers, right? To come to you with potential solutions rather than just the problem. So there's the artistic side, because every person on your team is going to require some different piece of you to get to that. And so this is where like presence and leadership is about connection. It really is. It's about people. It's not about that perfection. I think we have to have close to perfect processes. Like you got to have great fundamentals. You can't be a good leader and have bad fundamentals. But to take it to that next step, to really elevate people around you, it is about presence, and it's about connecting with people.
Yeah, this is great. I don't know if we talked about this in depth before. We obviously didn't record it, so others listening now, I wish they could hear this, because I think this is such an important point. We have a whole program called Executive Presence is a Myth, and we contrast that with emotional presence. So I think executive presence is this like pro forma, like performative thing that we've we've created, this identity, and everyone feels like they are not living up to it, where it's actually about you being as authentic and connected to your emotional your emotions as possible. So I mean, all right, maybe to make this practical, I'd love to know like one way you've helped people see that, or help people kind of, anything that you find work that sort of help people have that aha moment.
I mean, so that's a tough question, because for everyone, again, it's going to be a little different for how they get there. But ultimately, like, we're going to lead by example. Like our programs are designed in a way that makes sure that is at the forefront of the outcomes that we're looking for. And Marriott has an incredible leadership essentials and framework that makes this all as clear as possible. And our programs, from our accelerators to our core leadership programs, all focus heavily on the same tenets, so that no matter what part of our learning development you're in, you're getting the same message. You're getting this message that it is important, vital to the core business, not just like for you, not because it's nice to say for leadership, but vital to the core business, to our outcome as a company, to create belonging, to develop others, to create and lead change, and then also to excel and deliver results. But we don't start with those. We start with creating belonging. That's often the first word that's there. We have strong core values where nearly, I think we're like 3 years away from being a century-old company.
Yeah.
And JW Marriott, which is great. We'll join like one of 16 other companies or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
But the values that JW Marriott started his root beer stand with stand today and are on the walls of our building. And that's we put people first. We pursue excellence. We embrace change. We act with integrity, and we serve our world. And those things are at the core of our programs. They're at the core of everything that we build in leadership development, in L&D. And so I don't have a specific, here's how we get folks to realize that it's not executive presence, it's about people. But I will say that the thing that I bring to this role is I oversee, our programs are global. And I have wonderful continent partners that deliver the programs that we've built in collaboration with them in the continents, but I deliver the programs here in North America and in our CALA region. And one of the points of having me at these programs is to lead by example. And so one of the things that I make sure I am mirroring is I'm being the best version of me. My presence when I'm on stage is just me. Because if I'm putting on a show and I'm being Stephen, the executive development person who has a title and a job, it stinks. You smell it immediately. And one of the things we talked about, not recorded, but earlier, was you had mentioned, I've performed at some pretty amazing concert halls. And what the world sees, so I've given 2 recitals at Carnegie Hall. Incredible. It's one of just my favorite experiences. And being on stage is magical. The lead up to being on stage is nothing but utter chaos. That hall, they have 3 concert halls in that building. They have concerts all the time. 365 days a year, they have 4 concerts on each stage every day. And so you've got 15 minutes before to get to your green room. And then there's someone, okay, you've got your sound check now. It's for 5 minutes here. And it's bing, bang, bing, bang. And you have to go, go, go. And then even you bow, maybe you come on for an encore if they liked you. And you walk backstage and you're wow, this was this incredible moment. They're kicking you out. You got to go. We've got other people coming in here. Go, go, go. And so it's a tough space to be successful in it. And if you're trying to be someone else, and if you're trying to do something else, you're trying to be a leader that's not you, it won't work in chaos. And so that chaos is manageable because it's just me. I can just continue to be myself. I already know that I have the great fundamentals to support what's about to happen. If I have to put on another layer of something else on top of that, it doesn't work. And this is where I've often grappled with this idea of bringing your true self to work. Yeah, it's a really popular thing to say, and I've sat with it and go, I don't know, I don't. It's work. Do I really need to bring my full true self to work? But I think to be successful and to have people believe in you, you at least have to be your full genuine self when you're at work. My colleagues don't need to hear all of my ramblings about the NBA All-Star Game and all the changes that they need to make. Adam Silver, if you're listening, got ideas, you're not listening to this, but they don't need to hear all of my crazy thoughts, all of my crazy hobbies. But when I work with the team that I work with, I need to show up as Stephen, because otherwise, how are they going to trust me? And so being on stage is similar to that. You have to be on stage as yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that also includes in your most vulnerable, weak moments as well, showing up as that, not trying to pretend like nothing's going on. Because,
that's that I think is the hardest. So, and not for everyone. This might be more specific to folks like myself. That is where I would struggle the most, is how do you show up? How do you show up when things are tough? Something I've always typically had a harder time with, but it's super important, because people remember, and I don't know the actual quote for this, but people remember who go to funerals, right? Being there when it's hard. Because no one likes to go to those. No one likes to give condolences. It's uncomfortable, but it's human. And so being vulnerable when things are hard is equally, I said this earlier, having a team that wants to bring you their successes and having a team excited to bring you their failures and how they fixed it.
Yeah.
What a beautiful, what a beautiful outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to go back to what you said earlier, this idea of structure versus freedom, because I actually think that's so important, and having a routine and a good like foundation for things. And yeah, we can get into specifics of that, but I feel like that actually is a way to answer the other question I had afterwards, which is like, how do you get people to show up with showing up and this emotional presence and stuff? Is that it's actually not, it's by not focusing on that and by like getting the basics right. Because like the Carnegie Hall thing, right? Like you're up there and you had your 15 minutes or whatever, and like it it's not about those 15 minutes. It's about the 50 1,500 hours that led up to that, and like being consistent and getting that routine. Can you speak more to that?
I mean, that's ultimately what it's all about. You have to live this. Leadership is not a title. We have leadership titles. Of course, there's formal authority, and we have that. But true leadership is a habit. Excellence is a habit. Being a great leader is just habitual work. And so one of the things that we do in many of our programs is we create smaller pods within the cohort for them to actually, we'll give them a framework. We'll give them a structure for, do this for 3 minutes, do this for 5 minutes, now do this for 10 minutes. It's very black and white, very structured. And we have them after our programs, after the year-long program, we encourage them to continue doing it monthly with their pods to keep exercising the muscle of what is the best practice to listen to someone. One of the great, my favorite outcomes, I hear it all the time. We'll finish a program and we'll go around. We'll say, okay, what are you most excited to take away today? And I hear all the time, like listening to listen rather than listening to solution. And it seems just so silly. It's like we spent all this time together, and that like it's so basic, but it's so powerful. Because you go, how many times a day do I listen to solution versus actually just listening to intake? And so, but we build this into our programs where they are doing this through experience, repetitions. One of the reasons I was a successful trombonist, a successful musician, was repetition. Repetition's your best friend. You just do things until they become muscle memory. And until then, they're not a habit. And you might mess them up. But to get to the point where you're willing to do something in front of people, where you're being observed, that doesn't have to be on stage. That can be on an on-floor meeting that you're having. It can be a conference call. As soon as you're observed, the nerves hit, the pressure changes. Things that are new, you got to throw them away. And so we make sure that like we have this real, we want them to learn through experience. And so we want them to have the repetitions through the frameworks that we're developing so that they are absolutely getting the reps in before they have to do it on the fly.
Yeah, I love that. This idea of like building these sort of micro habits throughout the cohort experience. I'm curious if you are exploring any ways to scale that, like AI role play and that kind of thing. Anything that you find interesting there?
So like micro learning is something that's like really interesting to me as we think about how we develop leaders moving forward. From this idea of like, I'll use negotiation. It's not one of our, it's not a part of any of our programs. But I love negotiation as an example because we all are negotiators. And the best negotiators are the ones that are always negotiating. They're the ones that negotiate what they're having for dinner. They're the ones that negotiate what volume is on the TV. And then when it comes to negotiating a better mortgage rate, they're going to be more successful than the person who just waits to negotiate on the big things. And so micro learning, and like I don't know that this is like that might not be the name of it. People might have different titles for it. This idea that we could do really short, intense, focused like negotiation sessions on that topic, whether it's 90 seconds in a morning of a clip and a practice, but to get folks starting to work through the muscle required for the thing without having to do the thing. And so like, if your 90-second message about negotiation was about, mutual gains approach and how you can both win. All right, now I want you to go in a 1 out of 10 pressure situation, go to the corner store and negotiate. And I want you to win, and I want the person working at the cash to win. Right? Go do that right now. And so that's like, again, we're not doing negotiation in my programs, but it's a really clear example
It's
of
a
like
good
how you can
example,
do
yeah.
little things.
Yeah.
All right. So on day 3, on a Wednesday morning, you've got a little snippet of information here. This one's pressured 3 out of 10. So we've got 3 heat out of 10. I want you to go negotiate with, your landlord. It could be any number of things, but how can we integrate the learning on just like a more continuous cycle in really small, manageable moments? Because for the programs that I'm running, these are busy people, and I do not at any point want to waste their time. And if they don't understand the purpose of what we're doing, or if something's too long or too lengthy, I'm going to lose them. And that's, now it's the waste of their time. It's a waste of our resources. It's just like, that's not what we're looking for. So trying to figure out how we can create impact through like really great habit building. So that's very interesting to me. I don't have an answer for it yet, but it's I've spoken to some people who are working on this type of thing, and it's of real interest to me.
Yeah. I like this idea of, I mean, it goes back to what you said as well about breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, right? So like, that's the starting point for this. And then saying, okay, here's kind of the concept or the framework or the mental model. And then to then also say, not just ways to practice it in a work setting, but to do it with your cornerstone, right? Like that's the key, because we're talking about human skills here. And this is, I think, going to become increasingly more important. This is life skills. This isn't just work skills.
Well, and one of the big challenges we've assessed is like this ability to work across generation, and it's a real challenge. And if you wait to get into the office to be able to work with someone who's a different generation than you, up or down, it doesn't matter. It's difficult in any direction. If you wait till work, well, it's going to be work. It's going to be difficult, and it's going to be this thing that happens at work. But what if you were to try to connect with people of different generations all the time? What if you just got really good at listening to people with different perspectives? What I know, a wild concept. What if we just listened to people more?
Yeah.
That's nuts. I know. Let's not go crazy here. But if you're practicing, let's just say, I'll just use an example. Like you are a baby boomer manager and you've hired a bunch of new Gen Z employees. If you're waiting till that Monday morning meeting to try to relate with them and understand what makes them tick, it's too late. But if you start practicing, you go to the grocery store and the person restocking the aisles, and you want to ask them a question, try to connect with them on a human level, you might strike out. The stakes are really low. They're going to forget you. They're going to talk to 1,000 people that day. Maybe you do it at the hardware store, and maybe you do a little better this time. And so maybe you get in that meeting, it's less awkward, it's less forced. You're just being you, because you're used to just being with people and listening to people and understanding that their wants, their likes, they're different than yours, and that's okay.
Yeah, we tend to overthink it a little, I think, and often it's just actually just having the experience as often as possible. Yeah. Okay, so actually, maybe there's like a final question here, and because I feel like what's interesting in this conversation has come out is the importance of curiosity, the importance of listening to listen. I love that framing because it's the path to understanding, right? Like listening to solution is the path to just like, and you also touch on perspectives. Listening to solution is the path to like deepening your perspective, but you're not broadening it to take in the other person's perspective, and that is everything. Like it's all perspectives, and like the more you can understand them, the more you get a better picture for what's going on. The more you can kind of like intuit what needs to happen next, right? Like I don't know if you can maybe speak to that, and yeah, maybe I'll have a follow-up question on that. But just like, do you find like that also as equally as important as I do?
I think so. We talked about it through the adaptive leadership lens of getting out on the balcony.
Yeah.
And like this, it does sound simple, listening to listen, but gaining perspective. The in my estimation, and this is not a revolutionary thought, I think it's Brene Brown who said it first. The only skill that's going to matter in the next 10 years is self-awareness. And if we don't have perspective, how can we be self-aware? And without that piece of self-awareness, all of the things that we've decided in my role, and that I think that the industry is deciding is important in future leaders, become nearly impossible to achieve if you're just woefully aware of your surroundings, if you haven't taken perspective of what's happening, of what's going on. And so, yeah, I think it's wildly important, this idea of taking perspective, of listening. And it's such um, a simple thing, but like, unless we all win, like embracing this power of we concept, and like, unless we're all winning, we're not winning. Like, you're not gonna win alone, not in a setting like ours. You might have some short-term successes, but unless your whole team feels like they're winning on a daily basis, it's not going to be sustainable. And so you really do have to embrace everyone that's going to be around you for all of the crazy challenges that are coming our way.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, I wish we had more time, and we're gonna have to maybe do a round two of this, because there's so many other parts that I wanted to talk about here. But let's end things off. I want to give you a chance to share one last piece of advice that you have picked up as a teacher. So this can be from your time as a music teacher, or it could be from your time as an executive development teacher. And I use that intentionally. I think teaching is the skill that is. You said self-awareness. I mean, I think there's a lot of skills that we probably do ourselves an injustice by saying any one of them is more important than the other. But it does feel like they're like a handful. And either way, I think it's safe to say that they're all human skills, right? Like self-awareness, curiosity, all these kind of things. So, for folks out there listening to this who are building leadership programs, or just leading a team, right? Like, and want to get the most and create that sense of belonging and all of that kind of stuff we've talked about. What is one thing you have learned that's like so deeply ingrained and just in your psyche that you will take with you, whatever you do, that you want to kind of end this conversation with?
Have a genuine interest in optimism and joy for everything around you. If that is the one thing I hope people, when they meet me, that they feel, if they spend time with me, if they were a student, if they're someone in a program, or if there's someone I work with, is that I try to find joy in all of the things that we do. And I'm like, it's really true. Like, I do find them joyful. Like, I'm being honest. When I am really optimistic and really excited about something, it's real. And that's just, I think it's wildly important. It's very easy to get down and feel pessimistic about opportunity and workload and like just all of those things. That's really easy. But it is so much better. It's so much more infectious. It's so much better for you, and it's so much more infectious for the people around you, just to love what you're doing, to learn openly, and to be excited about new things. So like one thing, that's it. You may have seen me laugh when you asked this question, and I'm not sure if there's a language rating on a podcast like this, but no, I do have one other, and it's that any asshole can do it the second time. And yeah. And just like, if people who have met me as a teacher know, they're like, what's something that Stephen teach? And that's what people will say. That comes from the golf course with my dad. That's a whole long story, but any asshole can do it the second time is a great one too. But no, like joy and optimism, and learning openly, it's just so important.
I mean, I just knew, like, when you and I first started talking, that we think so similarly. Like, we have 5 principles for learning, and the 5th one is learn for the joy of it. Yeah, like that's everything. Like, and it is like that. And I think once you take that, then everything, people listening now, go back and listen to the conversation again, because then all the pieces start to make sense. That's how you started. You fell in love with the trombone. And then it's that application, those many years you spent doing it, because you found it joyful, you found it playful.
It's, and I mentioned I have a 2-year-old. It's how we learn. Learning is joyful. When I watch my son learn a new word, or repeat something that I've said to him, or figure out how to open the door on the truck he's playing with, there is a true spark of joy. And we look at those kids and we go, oh, wouldn't it be great to be able to get that again? Isn't it nice how fast a toddler learns? Well, the truth is, we learn just as fast. And the truth is, we can have just as much joy about the things that we're consuming too. We choose not to. And so like this childlike wonder about the things that we can consume is it's infectious, and people will hop on board if you do that by example. So I love that. If that's the fifth, I can't wait to hear the first four.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of things for round two of this conversation. Stephen, on that note, that's a fantastic way to end this. I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And yeah, I really look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, Andrew, the pleasure's all mine. Would love to come back. This has been wonderful.
Hello. I hope you enjoyed that episode. It's Andrew again with a quick message. If you'd like to support the show, the best way to do that is to leave us ratings and reviews where you listened. If you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and feel free to leave a comment. We love hearing from our listeners and viewers. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please take the time to give us a rating and leave a review. Once again, we love hearing from our loyal listeners. If you're listening to this on Spotify, please hit the follow button to make sure that you don't miss new episodes as they come out. See you next week for another episode of the Learning Culture Podcast. Thank you for listening.